go out, start a business and not even do
the same way.
Okay, but sometimes I must admit that sometimes when you look at the curriculum, it doesn't touch on value chain management, development and management. But it does touch on marketing and the buyer process, which is partly part of this, really. So I will say that one of the reasons is that we sometimes live in boxes.
Oh, dear.
You know, we have a box for, I'm in the classroom. Then when we get out of the classroom, we are not able to continue with what we were there. You know, we go to something else. I've had to ask one of my students, when I was teaching one of the important management theory, and we're discussing about integrity and the role of integrity in winning the confidence of customers, in winning the confidence of international traders that you sell your products to outside the country. Everybody was excited, and there was this gentleman in particular who was very excited, and I know where he sits in class. He participates quite well in class. And I just told them, you know, jokingly, I said, well, we are touching on this topic because it was a very practical class, so that when you go out there, some of you will be ministers, some of you will be commissioners, some of you will be governors, and maybe one of you will be president. And they laughed and said, oh, amen. And this guy was one of them. Within 2 years that they graduated, he was made commissioner of finance for a state. And I was excited, thinking that what we have taught in class, he will put it into practice. But he did exactly the opposite. The opposite. So when I was talking earlier about people living in boxes, they don't connect what they learn in the classroom with reality. That's why we must change our educational system to be more practical, not so theoretical. We must find a way for our students, like my students in my 400 level, they came to me and said, Ma, we'd like to go for industrial attachment before we graduate. We don't want to just go with theory. We must find a way to ensure that we teach people things and they actually practice it. When I asked this man, why did you go there as commissioner of finance and you were behaving this way? He was silent. All he could say is, sorry, man. Sorry, man. What has that got to do with what he has done? Anyway, what I'm trying to say is, people, it's very difficult for our people when our culture is, we wrap it around ourselves. We don't want to break out of the norm, out of the tradition, but somehow we have to. And luckily for us, young people, yes, if we must grow and compete externally, we have no choice now, because like I tell my students in marketing class, your competitors are no longer just in Ibadan or in Lagos. They are in Paris, they are in New York. Believe me, you can. My brother in Texas orders food from Nigeria. They order a egusi soup already cooked to the US, and they deliver it to them. You buy yams in one country and it's within 24 hours. You get, so your competitors are everywhere. So you can't afford to hide your head in the sand. So we must break out. And I want to say that I'm very proud of young people. They are breaking out. Maybe because of social media. They are breaking out. They are finding out what are their colleagues doing outside. And this issue of the ushers I talked about earlier comes from that. I'm sure they must have seen it done somewhere. I don't know where it came from, but I'm happy. But for us to compete internationally, we must use the value chain concept. Because it forces you not just to think about the bottom line now, but it forces you to think about the future. You begin to think of what will they likely need in future. And that future could be 2 weeks, 3 months. From now. And that's how America and others do it. They think ahead. So they now tell customers, don't you think you will want this thing? And they say, oh yeah, that's true. We can, you know. So we can't be catching up. We should lead. And Nigeria has the capacity to lead. Because we have been so blessed with resources, all manner of resources, but we are not using them. Like mangoes, for example, we still eat mango and throw away and let the red rot in. We don't process enough. And then you go to some other African countries, you eat mango all year round. They don't even have as much mangoes as we, because they are thinking of the concept of value chain. We need the government and the private sector to be more proactive, you know, because value chain requires thinking. You have to think. You have to be on your toes all the time. Yes. If somebody in the chain is slowing you down, you say, look here, you can't catch up. Step aside.
Coming up.
Some small businesses, they have some advantage over large businesses. Not in terms of money, but this personal touch. Personal touch. Yes. When you get to the place and the person says, oh, good morning. How are your children? It creates customer delight.
And I think also we need to also emphasize here that the stakeholder concept.
Yes, yes.
You know, which is another thing that I observe is lacking here, and which is another benefit of the value chain concept. You want to do it all, but you can't do it all.
You can't. You can't.
And even if you do succeed in doing it all, you won't be successful in anything. A lot of people don't know that when you go to China, the end product you see is produced in shops that are just like what you have in Adamasingba and Oshodi.
Yes.
You know, I'd like you to touch more on that, on the need for entrepreneurs to understand the stakeholder concept, the team, that you are strong as your team, even though you're a one-man business. You don't have to think finance, think accounting, think business, think about your resources and your raw materials. You don't want to grow your farm and also have your poultry and also have your store where you sell at Chicken Republic. But if you allow yourself to see the stakeholder concept, then you'll be able to identify the many sectors where you can partner, the concept of synergy.
Yes. Actually, the beauty of stakeholders is that you bring people in that are relevant to the chain.
Okay.
There are some people like the banks, they are relevant to a chain because they supply the finance. You know, if it's the Bank of Industries, for example, they are funding certain kind of projects, and the products you are making fit into their line, they become part of the stakeholders that will come in. Your state government is interested in what you are doing, they become part of the stakeholders. Then all people that are relevant to making one item of the total product or the other becomes part of the stakeholders. But the importance of you, who started the chain, is that you have set a standard. And selection of these stakeholders is based on that standard. You will not reduce the standard or select anyone that will diminish the standard. That's the beauty of, and in fact, when stakeholders meet, like some time ago, we met at my NGO, we're discussing with stakeholders on this issue of value chain and how to help state governments in Nigeria to work together on economic cluster basis. You know, when we came together, there were some ideas we had, but there were many ideas we didn't have until we had a stakeholders meeting.
The synergy.
Yes, and people began to say, oh, why don't we do it this way? Why don't we do it? And I said, wow, we didn't think about that. So when you work together as stakeholders, even though he's the one making the thread, he can tell you that my thread will not work without weak fabric that you have brought. You better strengthen the fabric. So you give ideas to one another. So you can't know it all. Yeah, you can't know it all. Even what you know, you think you know. When you meet as stakeholders in a stakeholders forum, you find out that people have ideas higher than yours, especially young people. They have brand new ideas that you never thought about. So it's a good thing. And incidentally, you mentioned the issue of clusters. When we are dealing with value chains in terms of the country rather than just entrepreneurs, that actually is important. Clusters, economic clusters. Like I mentioned at the beginning, God has been so wonderful. He has blessed this nation with resources in all the geopolitical zones. And that you can actually have economic clusters, like in the southeast, they manufacture things a lot. In the north, some parts of them, they do agriculture a lot. There are things that different parts of the country have been blessed with. And when you act as clusters, what they produce in the east, they are not going to consume everything there. They have to take it to the north. And the north has to bring agriculture to them. So when you think in terms of economic clusters, you are thinking of how can the government encourage those clusters by building infrastructures for those clusters. And at the end, building roads, building rails for them to connect with one another. Because it's a system.
It's a system.
Just like when you are thinking of an entrepreneur who is going to think of the workers, the distributors, the marketers coming together. As a nation also. Yes, pardon me? HR. Yes. As a nation, you also have to think of this thing that is made in Maiduguri, how can I get it to Lagos? This thing that is made in Lagos, how can it go to Port Harcourt? What kind of infrastructure can government put in place? How can I ensure that Ogun State and Lagos State collaborate to ensure that they work together because they share their contiguous states? They share the same boundary. How can we make sure they work together? And in working together, how can we make sure that what they produce goes to other parts of the country? So the issue of value chain, it works at the national level as well as at the micro level at the individual business level.
And you also mentioned that at the personal level.
Yes.
I didn't forget that.
Yes, at the personal level.
Before the cameras rolled, you were telling me that even at the personal level,
at the personal level,
to manage your own life,
exactly,
value chain concept is relevant.
It's relevant.
It helps to tie up the different aspects of your being, of your existence.
In fact, it shows that you are a serious person. When you put structures and processes in place, that helps you move from morning till evening. There are some people who wake up and they don't have any idea how the day is going to look. And you say, it's 10 o'clock already. And so, boy, how now? What are you going to do? Say, I'm not sure yet. I won't reach this place. He has no focus. If nobody would probably say it to him. In their mind, they say, this man has no future ambition.
It's like
no future ambition, NFA.
Just drifting. And that's what a lot of individuals do. Yes. And they bring that attitude into their business. Can
you imagine such a person, if you hire such a person, at 10 o'clock he's yawning, he's tired. But there are people, they have no jobs, but they have ambition. Yes. When they wake up in the morning, I'm going to go to this place today to look for a job. I'm going to go to this library today to do this. And they fit things together. And when there's anything that is creeping in that is not in line with their plan,
they quickly tune it off.
They have value chain
bubbling
their lives. Yes. So they carry, when you hire such a person, he carries that to the business. So it's important that in building value chain, that your stakeholders that you bring in must be carefully selected to maximize your profit, but more important, to be efficient and to be effective. So that your end product, when it gets to the consumers, the outcome is positive. And then you can grow. And like you always mention, you can replicate this.
Exactly.
You say, I know that's a baby of yours.
Yes, replication.
Yes, replication is really important.
The pragmatist in me just wants to crave your indulgence to also add to what you just said now, to chip in that I walked into a store just a few days ago, and gift store, high-end is like, it's not like exotic and expensive like Harrods, but it's like a mini Harrods.
In Nigeria?
Yes.
In Ibadan?
In Ibadan.
Oh, wonderful.
And the products, the goods, very, very good. Variety, unique things, interior materials and so on and so forth. And then I thought to myself, this is the weakest link. The attendant. The attendant.
Ooh.
The store sales officers. A lot of outlets in Nigeria and some African countries that I've been to are like that. You get in there, the interior works is superb, the products are high-end, but they just go to the village and bring
somebody that they need to help get a job without linking it to the chain.
To the chain.
Yes. It's so important. So then I want to mention this, that I hope many businesses in Nigeria will listen to what you just said, because it's so important. Those who own restaurants, those who serve in restaurants must be. I used to be a waiter a long time ago in the US. To pay my fees, I had to be a waiter and so on. I was the best there was, because the tips I got was more than what they came to eat, because they couldn't believe somebody could love being a waiter so much that some people will eat for about $20, and when they are leaving, they give me the $50 tip.
Just because of the attitude you brought into the business.
Yes, and that is so important. Any job I have ever done, cleaning the ground in the schools in the US, doing whatever guru job we were doing, I did it with so much pride, and I got paid. Not only in money kind, but in thank you. Thank you. So you must bring in people who share your vision. You can't have a good restaurant with good menu and so on, and the server is hungry, the server has not showered properly, you can see it, they don't smell well. All of these things are important.
It's poorly dressed.
Yes, they don't use deodorant. These things are very important. And I'm glad you brought it up, because it's one of those weak links that can destroy a very good chain. When you don't have the right support staff, people that are actually the faces that they see. One of the advantages that small businesses have over big businesses, people don't want to hear this, but it's the truth. Some small businesses, they have some advantage over large businesses.
I think so.
Not in terms of money, but this personal touch. Personal touch.
They are nimble.
Yes. When you get to the place and the person says, oh, good morning, how are your children? it creates customer delight. When people buy things, they go away not just with that product, but they remember the service they got.
The feeling.
The feeling. And they are content. And they say, I am going back to that store. Even if I don't have anything to buy, I'm going to go there and pretend as if I have something to buy. I'm going to go there and window shop. Yes.
I've heard of people who go to ShopRite just to buy bread.
Yes.
And people who go to just to buy a kind of Coke. They
walk around and they like the air around them. Nigerians need to begin to think like that.
Oh dear. You were a one-time Chief Economic Advisor to the President of Nigeria. What would you be advising the three tiers of government in terms of this value chain principle? We want to just narrow ourselves to it because, I mean, it's so broad, business and economy is broad, but this value chain, how can the government facilitate this idea in their own way? The first tier, second tier, and the third tier, taking into cognizance also the role of the three arms of government. That's a tall one, man. But,
No, I think I'll simplify. I'll just answer an aspect of it, since your topic is actually not to do with the government per se.
No.
But with respect to, regional cooperation, regional development, ensuring that development takes place across Nigeria, not in some parts. Because if you go to the northeast, there's so much poverty, and because of that, there's instability. If you go to Niger Delta, because of poverty. So the instability and insecurity we have stems from poverty and a lot of things like unemployment and things like that. I dare say that value chain concept is one way you can correct the imbalance. Growth has to have a balance.
Growth has to have a balance.
Yes, it has to have a balance. It must be across Nigeria. That is why God has not made a mistake endowing Nigeria across the geopolitical zones. So value chains must be built within each of the zones, and government can enable that by encouraging, earlier on I mentioned the issue of Kaduna and Gombe working together, Lagos and Ogun working together, states working together, realizing that they can't do everything. There are some things that I am blessed with in my state, in my geopolitical zone, that when we use the value chain to produce a lot, unless there's demand for it, we can't achieve anything. But the demand can be in another zone. That means that we must collaborate. So what the government can do is to enable the states to work together by building infrastructures that connect the states. By helping the states who are already building infrastructures like light rail and so on to complete it, and ensuring that these people are brought together. Luckily for us, the central government and most of the states are APC. So they won't say now that, oh, I'm dealing with the other party. They can work together to ensure that, what really excited me about the last few years is I was studying, it wasn't APC then, it was before they became APC. ACN. That if you go to Abeokuta, come to Ibadan, you see some structures that are similar. They actually sat together and say, this party must do this. You governors, you must go and do that. That is beauty of working together and ensuring that everybody falls in line and work together. What I want to advise this government to do is there are things that the state governments can do better than the federal government. There are things that the local government can do better than the state government. But there is synergy. They must work together. And when we have the value chain concept, that means that each of these level of government have a place to, they have a part to play in ensuring that the value chain works. And they must be ready to assist businesses within each geopolitical zone to build their value chain, to manage their value chain with the support from government, with the support from the financial sector, with the support, for example, please let me just end with this. Please. If, for example, we practice the issue of value chain in Nigeria, and we begin to produce things that we used to import. If, for example, there's a man in the East who produces vehicles. Many people don't know him. His name is Innocent. He produces vehicles. When I was in government briefly, I went to his factory and I couldn't believe that these vehicles were made in Nigeria. But he told me that he wanted to make tires, but he didn't have rubber. So he was trying to plant rubber plantation. Yeah. And I said, why? Talk to him. He said, I've tried, they didn't listen to me. So I just picked up the phone and called the man in the rubber industry, the head of them, and he came. Yanusi, he came and talked to Innocent. And he said, okay, I'll make you good tires. They began to work together. Innocent didn't need to make rubber anymore. He didn't need to plant plantation. He focused on what he could do. Best. He was very excited. Now, that is what the government can do. Ensure that he encourages people to do what they have comparative advantage to do. And then bring them together. And then what the federal government can do, providing infrastructure power is very important. Ensuring that there is strong value chain in oil and gas. Unfortunately, we don't have time to discuss that now. Because if you have strong value chain in oil and gas, oh, many of our problems are gone. Because many of the things we import now, and this subsidy thing we are talking about, will no longer exist. True. Many of the things that we are not refining, we will refine here. True. And when we do that, the forex that we use to import these things, we don't need to. It stays here. And in addition to that, there will be liquidity. True. They don't know what to do. They will not be forced to give it to the real sector to produce. And that will be China's loss. My brother, you know, it's a wonderful thing. And I know that, given what I've seen with the APC so far, I believe strongly that somehow if they put their act together, this country will be transformed, truly transformed. Before we go, I'd like you to touch on relating this concept of value chain to the service industry. We've been talking about manufacturing, we've been talking about retailing and merchandising. I'd like you to also extrapolate and relate it to the service industry, because Nigeria is, at the moment, much more service-oriented than manufacturing. Actually, you yourself had done that even before I did. You mentioned the issue of somebody with a store who was doing, that's part of the service industry. The Nollywood is part of the service industry. The restaurant is part of the service industry. There are things we take for granted now that if we are going to work by the value chain concept, we will no longer take for granted. If you go to some other African countries, which I won't mention, they started the way we are talking now, and they've gone quite far. Oh. Their service industry uses the value chain, and they don't leave from the car park down to the very last. Yes, it takes a lot more to frown than to smile. Oh dear, that's deep. But that's true. It doesn't take anything of you. Oh, good afternoon, good morning. How are you? What country are you from? Your accent. Oh, are you from Kenya? I know you are not in Nigeria. Oh, welcome to Nigeria. Believe me, you may just be the only one that person has heard in Nigeria saying, being nice. So our value chain must transcend just the physical product. It must also include the non-physical things that people cannot touch, but they can experience. So we're gradually winding down now, and we need to know your final thoughts to startups, small business owners, and of course those who run conglomerate business out there, and of course the government who will facilitate all of these stakeholder concepts. Your final thoughts and your final message. So my final message is that for many of us, including those in government, maybe our time is limited. But for the young people who are really coming out to give their best, they need support from us, support from government. We should give that support. Whatever we know that will push them forward beyond the boundary we have set, we should give it that support. And I already seen from the discussion we had before that young people are breaking out of the box. We should let them break out. They will make mistakes, which is okay. It's part of it. When you make mistakes, it helps you to even grow. Yes. So we need that support. But we cannot hide our heads in the sand and say, oh, we know it all. They are too young, which is something that this system should stop. So I believe that whatever skills they require, capacity they require to excel and build value chains that result in national development and balanced development in this country, we should do it. And those of you who have talent to give to those in the north, in the northern part of this country, we should begin to do it, because that's part of the link. It's part of the chain. So those people in the media in the north, they also need those of you here to assist. So it's a privilege to talk about this, because I'm hoping that our discussion may have affected one or two people, and that they themselves will also carry the message to the next level. So thank you for inviting me.
Professor Garba,
yes.
Thank you very much for honoring our invitation to be on the program.
Thank you very much.
It's been quite stimulating speaking with you.
Thank you.
And educating.
Thank you.
We wish you the best in your endeavors.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
God bless you.
Thank you.
Thank you.